Hello, and welcome to the In a Nutshell podcast with myself, Andrew Miles Davis, and my co host, Chris Branch. This is the daily 10-minute podcast where we take out all of the techie talk around generative AI and focus on what the everyday person, content creator, and marketer really wants to hear. Now, we've only got 10 minutes, so we can only focus on one particular subject. And today, we're going to talk about a subject that is from a news article that we read recently. And it actually is more relevant to us today than it was a couple of years ago, or for Chris a couple of months ago. And that is to do with AI is now able to tell personalized bedtime stories to children. So let me break down what this means. I'm just going to read a bit of the article to kind of give it some more context. So it's saying that AI has made its way into the bedroom routine of many families by generating personalized bedtime stories based on children's interests. AI may soon eliminate the need for waiting for new content for bedtime stories. So stories generated by AI can now be tailored to a child's interests and preferences, narrated by AI-powered chatbots like ChatGPT and Google Bard. The original version of ChatGPT, which was launched last year, has the capability to generate a children's story from scratch. Although AI has been known to lack originality and quality, parents have the freedom to control the narrative. They can prompt specific details and essentially get the story. Now, as someone from a generation like yourself has come up with a lot of typical stories that now I've got, like my son is 2 and I'm reading him some of the stories that I used to remember, plus seeing a whole bunch of new stories as well. What's your thoughts about this generally?
It's crazy, isn't it? Like, just to think of the possibilities of that. Like, the first thing I thought of when you were reading out the story was actually that this is maybe a good use case where fiction doesn't matter. One of the big issues with AI so far is if it hallucinates, then it's a real issue. But if they're reading fictional stories that don't actually exist, and it doesn't matter whether the consequence, of a kid listening to something, it's a magical world maybe. Like, it doesn't need to be real or, have factual basis or grounded in any news. But at the same time, you wouldn't want it to go rogue and then just start reading out things that could potentially cause trauma, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, so there's like, you would have to, as a parent, be listening to the first few stories it read to your kid and then eventually feel comfortable enough to walk away. But then at what point do you let it, just start saying whatever it wants? It could be propaganda. It
When
could
you
be
leave the room, it'll go into a different story.
Exactly, yeah. And then you're all of a sudden like, oh my God, being a dark undercover CIA trained.
Whatever. Yeah, exactly.
Or whatever.
When I first read this, I was put off. I was like, why are we outsourcing everything to AI? There's certain things that we just want to do as humans. Then I read it again properly and I said, actually, there's 2 things I see from this. The first thing, I like the idea of generating new stories, especially if it's relevant to them. So, for example, if my son was really into football, like when I was young, I can't really remember many football stories like when I was like young. I don't remember many, or definitely boxing or MMA, or even ones about like social media or computer games, and like you didn't really get those stories. You just had the traditional Alice in Wonderland and stories like that. So I think it's good from that point of view, the creation, especially if we can make it a bit more personalized, have a bit more personality in it as well. I guess where for me, I'm not sure, is AI reading it to the person. Because then it kind of takes you out of the equation. And one of the things being a parent is spending as much time with your kid and having that your child and daddy's time to kind of sit down and read and connect and having that's the thing that for me I don't really.
Well, it's like we say with all of this new tech, you can be lazy with it. You can use it as an excuse to be lazy, or you can actually make it inspire your kids. Like, it goes in tandem with being personalized education for me. If you're able to have an AI go through your schooling experience with you and constantly giving it the perspective that most interests you in order for you to best absorb that knowledge. That's the
Yeah.
same way that this story imagine, right? Like we talked before in the green room, this podcast, about how I used to listen to Stephen Fry reading my audiobooks to me. And there's a nice
Mm.
little segue, because there's another AI opportunity here, in that authors that have, or speakers like Stephen Fry who've read audiobooks in the past, they can actually train AI models in order to make them read other stories in their voice. And then there can be some sort of royalty scheme for this. Now,
Yeah.
hopefully, that's as popular as AI reading it out to your kids, so that true human authors still earn royalties for doing the things that they do. But,
Mm.
yeah, it's a weird time, like you said, where we could just become very lazy with this, and it could be a very detrimental thing. And then there's the other side of the coin, which is it could make your kid have the best imagination, have real passion and creativity, and
Mm.
pursue things they may not in their life otherwise, because of the personalization. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, I definitely think
weird.
it can assist parents, and it can help parents work with your children to come up with a
Mm,
story. And also, I'm just, again, my mind's just racing now. It's the ending may change every time, so
mm,
they
mm,
don't know where it's gonna go. Even though 2/3 of it might be the same, the last quarter may change.
mm.
Like, because you as the parent decided to change it. So again, I like that idea. I think, going back to what you said about the Stephen Fry and getting someone like a voice that you recognize to
Mhm,
deliver it. I guess from that point of view, yeah, it makes sense. I like the idea of, let's say, for example, you've got character AI, or
mm.
even Meta when they signed up, like the Snoop Dogg
Yeah.
and Brady and like MMA fighters, all of that as well. I can imagine them using like those characters to do things like audiobooks, or in this case, children's stories, depending on who it is, obviously. Uh,
Mm.
I can see that working as well. And I think that would be quite interesting.
Yeah. Imagine if you could have every single audiobook that you've ever listened to read to you in David Attenborough's voice.
Yeah.
That would be incredible, right?
Mm.
Like, imagine if that you really understood his voice and it made it soothing and calming to you, and it's the best way for you to absorb knowledge. Now,
Yeah.
you could have had that audio book read out by someone that was quite grating to you and that put you off learning that knowledge, and that could be your gateway to stopping that knowledge entering your brain. And
Mm.
then that could have so many butterfly consequences in the
Yeah.
future. Like, you might not pursue this career or this thing in your life because you didn't like the way Woman in Black was read to you, or something
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
this, or Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah.
And you could,
True. True.
like, I talked to my friends and I asked them, because I was a teacher, what was your experience of school? Did you have any teachers really inspire you? Do you even remember their names? Many of them will go, there was one teacher in my whole school that made me
Yeah.
be passionate for history or IT, and that's why I do this as a career. And it
Mm.
takes that one teacher of hundreds of teachers you've ever had. Now, AI could be that for you as a kid. It really could be that for you.
Yeah, definitely. I could get that inspiration. It actually reminds me, when I was younger, like at the age where these books would be,
Mm,
um, there was it was called Storyteller, and you
mhm,
had like, again, this is me casting my mind back numerous years. It was just audiobook, so you listen to it on cassette,
mm,
and then it would just, somebody would say stories, and you had different voices as well, which obviously you can do this from an AI point of view. So I
mhm,
guess, like with many things, it's the same concept. It's just adding technology to make it more relevant on today's world. So
mm,
obviously, there, it doesn't matter. Disc one, tape one, side one, it was always this story, and it always went a particular
mhm,
way.
mhm.
Where obviously, using AI, you could have the same story, but then you can start remixing it
Tweaking
or
it, yeah.
personalize it so it's just for you. So I guess from that point of view, before, at the beginning of this episode, I was like, nah, not really. But now I'm kind of, you've convinced me to be like, actually, this is quite interesting. Let me see it. But I
If used
think,
correctly, that's
if
always
used
the
correctly, yeah.
story behind this stuff.
Exactly. And in a nutshell, what we're really saying is that when it comes to audio, when it comes to stories, AI, generative AI, can really help enhance that experience, especially
Yep.
if you are a parent or a guardian reading, get your kids to listen to.
Mm,
But what I will also say is, please don't forget, the human side of things.
Mm.
Don't outsource that experience, because I still think there's a lot of value in stuff that isn't necessarily technology based.
I agree.